Hey YouTube, Kevin Cleary with a knife video. This is going to be a comparison between two zero tolerance. This is the zero tolerance 0562 and this is the original zero tolerance 0560. Now this is not the original configuration, this is the black wash version that's a little newer. I can't remember if they're 2013 or 2014, but anyway, that's how this comparison is going to break down. Both of these of course are in the 0560 family. This of course is much newer and represents a few things that are pretty cool changes. This one is older and is sort of a throwback to the original designs and philosophy of zero tolerance, although it is their next, initially they were working with Ken Onion and Mick Strider. This is Rick Hinderer, obviously, who is sort of the next major guy that Kershaw worked with. So this is also a Hinderer design. Certainly it's smaller. Both of these are inspired by the XM18, XM24. This is closer in size to the XM18. In fact, exactly the same size. This is closer in size to the XM24, although not as exact as this is. This is probably, in a production knife, the closest thing to an XM18 that you can get. If you put these over top of each other, the footprint is almost exactly the same. Okay, it's also, by the way, Rick Hinderer's slicer grind, which you can get on an XM18. So let's compare these two and see how they break down. Let's start with size and weight as we always do. So size and weight on this, it's a 9-inch knife, 3 3/4 inch blade, 5 1/4 inch handle, weighs in at 6 ounces. You do have almost a full 4 inches of cutting edge here, which is pretty nice. Little gunk on there from me using this knife. So great blade. I really like this. And 6 ounces, although it's a little heavy, keep in mind that this is a full 9-inch knife. So you're getting a lot for the 6 ounces that you're carrying. This guy, on the other hand, is considerably smaller, of course. This one is 8 1/4 inches, 3 1/2 inch blade, 3 3/4 inches of cutting edge, which is really good in terms of, you've actually got more cutting edge than blade length, which I always like. And the handle on this one is basically 4 3/4. It's actually a little more than that, but for our purposes, 4 3/4 is close enough. All right, so the weight on this one is 5.45 ounces. So it's really only, it's actually a little more than half an ounce lighter, but half an ounce is not that big of a deal when you're dealing with the difference in size. This is a considerably larger knife, so the fact that it can be as big as it is and weigh essentially as little as it does, or only be a little bit heavier than this much smaller knife, is kind of a win as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so this knife is actually pretty good in terms of size and weight. So do I prefer to carry one over the other? Not particularly. Okay, maybe you're a person who prefers a smaller knife and definitely you would like this. If you're a person who prefers a larger knife, you would obviously prefer this. Otherwise, their comparison, in an EDC roll, this one might be a little nicer because it's just that little bit smaller, so it may not be as big of an issue if you get this out in public. It carries just a little bit better. In the pants I'm wearing now, for example, the shorts I'm wearing, this one carries just fine. This one I do have to angle a little bit because it actually would run into the bottom of my pocket otherwise, so I have to kind of carry it on an angle like that. So it does make a bit of a difference carry-wise. The extra weight is not an issue for me at all. And remember, it's not even a whole ounce of extra weight. All right, so that's how these two stack up in terms of size and weight. What about some of the other categories? What about blade? Well, the first thing that I've got to say is this blade is M390, which is a phenomenal steel. Very popular right now, and I believe with good reason. I've had a couple of other blades in M390, and the performance is outstanding. Okay, so this blade, in my mind, is a superior steel to the LMAX, although not a night and day, end of the world type of difference. You know what I mean? It's not like if this knife was an LMAX, it would just be a piece of junk now. LMAX is still a great steel, and of course keep in mind that the base model of this is still in LMAX. So if you're comparing base model to base model, then you're still getting the LMAX steel. again, we'll start with this the way we have been doing. I'm not going to zoom in for this just because switching back and forth between the two knives is enough for my brain to handle, okay? In addition to, if I start zooming the camera in and out, who knows what could come out of my mouth. So I'm doing well just to handle one knife at a time and keep straight which one I'm talking about when. So, okay, blade on the 0560 is a drop point blade. It has this nice swedge at the top. It is a flat grind. Fairly thick grind. There's a lot of material out here to the tip. It still comes to a fairly good tip, but it's certainly got a lot of strength and a lot of thickness throughout the whole blade. A little bit thicker of a grind, but it's actually a pretty good trade-off. You know, I've had some sort of hard use, you know, combat style blades where the blade is too thick and it doesn't slice well. Okay, so that's not cool. That's not a problem with this knife. It definitely performs really well, but it's just mildly thicker than the slicer grind that you're going to get on this knife. Okay, 4 inches of cutting edge here, which I think is really, really good. Both of these blades excel in cutting edge. Remember, you got 3 and 3/4 inches of blade here, and almost 4 inches of cutting edge. Here you got 3.5 inches of blade and 3 3/4 inches of cutting edge. So both of these do really well in terms of how much cutting edge you get per blade length. I think that's a real win on both of these knives, so I'm not going to complain about either one. This one obviously is shorter by 1/4 inch. Is that 1/4 inch going to be the end of the world? Nah, probably not. What about performance? This one does cut a little better, especially, now here's the drawback to the slicer grind. If you are working out here in this portion of the blade, anything past my finger, it's a nice thin grind, it's a very high grind so that it slices really, really well. It almost acts like a flat ground blade. However, as you move toward the bottom of the blade, down here, the grind thickens up quite a bit, and you end up with, you know, if you were to sort of push this knife through, and so you can see it in 3D, you get this kind of thing happening. It would start out very thin at the tip, and then it would slowly get thicker and thicker until it's thickest down here. So that's a limitation of the slicer grind. Now, performance-wise, it's phenomenal. Okay, the edge is still consistent. The grind, the secondary bevel is still consistent. And so, although, you know, from a technical standpoint, it's kind of a weird grind, performance-wise, it really makes no difference. So this performs really, really well in those kind of slicing EDC tasks. You are limited in length, so as it compares to the 0560, you're dealing with a shorter knife, but for EDC tasks, I don't think you're going to notice any difference. If you're looking at more of a combat role, if you're looking at bushcraft or something like that, probably I would lean more toward this. It's a little more material out to the tip. It's not a huge difference. Essentially, the swedge ends here on the slicer grind and it ends here on the standard flat grind. So you're getting a little more material, a little more durability in the 0560 than you are in the 0562, but it's almost negligible. Now, if in philosophy you prefer one over the other, that's going to be a different story. Okay, so slices a little better, is a little more durable. Which one of those do you prefer? I would say this one does a little better as an EDC knife, although I still EDC this one more. This one's going to do a little better in a combat or bushcraft or hard use role. Okay, not that this one isn't good for hard use as well, but I'm going to say this one just edges it out slightly. What about lockup and deployment? Now here you're going to have a little more of a significant difference. The 0560 is smooth as silk. You can see here, if I can do it without cutting myself, it is a totally free dropping knife. On the other hand, the 0560 does need some help. It's not as smooth. I would compare it to if you had a Spyderco Southern, if you had a Spyderco Domino. Both of them are great. They flip really well, but they're not, you know, they're not silky smooth. Okay, this thing is smooth as glass, and lots of people have commented on that. This one flips really well. The detent is stiffer on this, and I need to make a comment about this while we're on this point of discussion. Okay, When the 0560 initially came out, there were all these complaints. The detent is too stiff, so they kind of lightened up the detent, but they discovered something along the way. With a stiffer detent, you get a better deployment, okay, because you've built up more energy as you're pushing down on this, you're pushing harder and harder and harder. Finally, when it releases, it just snaps out, okay? So, when they did the 0560, they purposely, 0562, they purposely made it a stiffer detent. So that when you push down on this and it finally deploys, it does rocket out. So, smoother, slightly faster. Which one do you prefer? For my mileage, I love the feel of that smooth, silky pivot on the 0560. It's great. It feels amazing. It's super thick, super strong, you know, as secure as any knife I've ever owned. And yet, when the thing drops, it just drops beautifully. All right. So on the 0560, it flips out really quick. Okay, but it's not a free dropper, and I do like the smoothness of the 0560 over the 0562. The other issue with the 0562 is because of the way this pivot is designed, you can have issues with it coming loose over time. You guys know I had problems with this. I'm not the only one. Lots of people have complained about it. The solution, Loctite often won't do it. I tried Loctite on this and it still came loose. What I ended up using was plumber's tape on the pivot screw, and that got it to a point where it will stay where I set it. Okay, so that is a bit of a fail on the part of this knife. However, you know, when the 0560 first launched, it had issues as well. Now, on the other hand, so we've talked about deployment, and I do prefer the 0560's deployment. It's smoother, even though it may not be as fast, the difference is not noticeable. However, on the lock bar is fairly similar. Both are quite comfortable, both are quite easy to disengage. There's nothing significant in terms of construction on the lock bar that needs to be mentioned. However, the 0562 has a stainless steel lock bar insert, and that is an improvement over the 0560, which doesn't have that. I believe these are carbidized. That was, you know, I read that recently, that the current iteration of the 0560 is a carbidized lock face, so it is going to hold up better than just standard titanium, but you know, a better solution in my mind is just a stainless steel lock bar insert. So that I think is an improvement, and that's something that's come over time. When the 0560 was released, no one was doing stainless steel lock bar inserts. Okay, so they just simply did what was kind of the best thing at the time. Now, as time has gone by, the 0562, which is of course a newer model, does have the lock bar insert, and I think that's a win. All right, so which one is better? I'll be honest with you, I do prefer the lockup and deployment on the 0560. It's smoother. It can be just as fast if you give it just a little more pressure, and it drops so cleanly. The other issue that I've had with this one is you have to, on this one, release the lock and it just falls, okay? On this one, you release the lock and you have to essentially defeat the detent twice. Okay, right now, where it sits, if I push on this, it will close, but I'm pushing on the detent ball, okay? So it's gotta go past the detent ball a second time. So it's, you know, you release it, it comes down, the bottom of the blade tang runs into the detent ball, and you've almost gotta release it again to get it to close all the way. And a lot of knives that I've handled recently have that. You know, they all seem to run into the detent ball. It's a slight change in engineering. It's not the end of the world, but I do like it when it doesn't happen. So it's nicer the way this one just falls totally free. Okay, so lockup and deployment, I think the 0560 takes it. Let's move on to the handle. Remember, otherwise these have been quite comparable. Obviously, in the blade comparison, if you want a bigger blade, you go with this one. Smaller blade, you go with this one. If you don't care, then they're pretty even. All right. What about the handle on these? Well, being an original sort of, I guess, an early zero tolerance offering, it's not an original, but early zero tolerance, it does have this 3D machined titanium, 3D machined G10, and it is so comfortable in hand. I remember a while back when I did the video of this knife, it's been quite some time now, but DC commented that the 0560 just feels like it's meant to go in your hand, and it so does. It feels phenomenal in hand. This handle is an absolute win. You've got tons of real estate, you can get a full, solid, good grip on it. You've got tons of texturing, so again, you're getting all kinds of retention. The jimping is just perfect, okay? I know some people complained about the jimping on this knife. I don't know, who the wussy manicured guys are that are complaining about this knife. Like, I have no problem with it, and I've flipped this hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. My finger didn't get eaten up, the jimping didn't, take the skin off, I don't have bones exposed. That was kind of just whining as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, there was complaining. I actually prefer the jimping on this to a lot of other jimping that I have to compare it to, including, by the way, this one. The jimping on here is good. The retention is good. The handle's definitely big enough, although it is smaller. The carbon fiber, of course, is smooth. There is a G10 version that's not smooth that would give you a little more grip. But on all versions, the titanium is just smooth. There's no texturing like there is on the 0560. So for all of those reasons, okay, the 0560 handle is much preferable to the 0562. Both are comfortable. Both have good retention as far as I'm concerned. I'm not worried about my hand sliding up on this or anything like that. Not at all. But the 0560 just feels so good in hand. It's like it was meant to be there. It's phenomenal. It still feels good in hand, but it just doesn't feel as good as the 0560. Okay, there is a lanyard hole here, which is good. I actually think both of these pocket clips are very, very good. I kind of wish, I think I said this before, but this style of clip where it's just kind of thin, just a simple bent over clip, I really like this, and I kind of wish all Kershaws would just go to this clip or one like it. For example, the Kershaw Knockout has a clip similar to this. The 0452 had a clip similar to this. It's a great clip. It just really, really works well. Do they need, the 05452, I kind of complained about it on there, more so because it doesn't seem to match the knife than because I don't like the functionality. It actually works really well. On the other hand, this clip is, of course, very, very similar to the Hinderer clip, but it's bent over, so it does carry a little deeper in pocket, which is great. Okay, both of these pocket clips are very good. I will say this. From an ingenuity standpoint, I love the way they pulled off this clip. There are no holes over here in the G10. You actually take this standoff out, flip it around, and there's a little kind of divot cut out of the handle on both sides to allow for the clip to fit on the inside of the handle. And I really, really like what they've done with that. That is a win, no question. So both clips I think are good. This 0560 does have the offering for a tip down carry, but who carries a knife tip down anyway? So there you go. That's my take on the two handles. Both are good. The 0560 is a little better, partially because it's bigger, partially because the machining that goes into this is more detailed. There's more grip on both the G10 side and on the titanium side. The one thing it's lacking, as I pointed out before, is a lock bar insert. Okay, now overall, what about these knives? Do I prefer one over the other? Does one just stand out? Not really. I really like both of these. I actually carry these quite often. This, I will say, because it's higher end, it's carbon fiber and all that, I tend to carry when I want a very capable knife, but maybe I'm going to church, or maybe I'm going to a wedding or something where I'm going to be wearing dress pants. And this knife is more suitable for that situation, I find. Doesn't really sacrifice anything in terms of usefulness, but it does look a little classier. This one, on the other hand, is what I carry if I'm going to go hunting or camping or fishing. It's a great hard use, combat ready knife that just will do anything and everything. I will say, let's say I'm traveling for the weekend, we're going to go on an overnight trip, and I need one knife that I think can do everything, I'm going to take the 0560 because of the extra size. And I may take both sometimes, and I have. All right, so there you go, guys. That's my discussion, my comparison between these two blades. Both are great. I will say I wish Zero Tolerance was still doing the 3D machining. I know it's an expensive process. I know it takes more work and more cost and more time in a factory and all that stuff, but it is so nice when you feel it in hand that I kind of would like to see it done more often, not only with Zero Tolerance, but other blades in the industry as well. They've gone to sort of the flat slab construction, which is fine, and I will say I appreciate the lower price point on most of the Zero Tolerances that are coming out now. In fact, I think all. I don't know if any of the new releases were over maybe 220, 240, something like that. So they have come down in price, and I'm sure from a marketing standpoint that allows them to sell more units, which is great. But I really love the 3D machining on the older Zero Tolerances. There you go, guys. That's my comparison. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will talk to you soon.